which 14 countries has the French who still control. Pop it up there. So you have Burkina Faso, of course, Burkina Faso, but that's not the first one. The first one is Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Bissau, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. Those are the countries that still have to deposit 85% of their GDP directly into the French treasury, which is what? And they don't get it back. They do not get back anything from that. Welcome again, guys. Welcome again to another episode of the WSXN podcast, where a united Africa is an undisputed Africa. So I want to talk about why is it the French is trying to hold on to its French colonies so tightly, over 14 of them, and why is he fighting tooth and nail to keep them colonized still? Because there's a whole lot of things are happening in the background that we don't know about or we're not privy to. But I've did a little digging and some research and I kind of find out. But I know it's basically for money because the French have over over 5 to 600 billion dollars they have in their treasury for these 14 African countries, and they're not returning it. But it gets deeper than that. That's not the only money. These 14 French African colonies, the French economy will collapse, crash, and become a third world country. And this is no joke because these 14 countries is what supplying the French economy. But let's take a look at a deeper dive. In the 1950s, when the Guinea was the first one who wanted to be independent, and when they tell the French they want to for them to leave, the French destroyed the country. They literally destroyed everything from buildings to they destroy everything before they leave. So he set the Guinea the country back. Then when the next country other try to do the same thing, they threaten the same thing, but what now? That's how they invented the CFA franc. That's they have to use the French CFA franc and they have to pay back they have to pay back the infrastructure that the French build and they have to pay a tax annually. That's what the deal was signed, and then every country adopt that deal who wanted to be independent. Well, semi-independent because the French still have to pay a tax to the French. So let's jump into the tax. They have to pay no, they have to deposit 60%, no, 65% of the country's GDP have to be deposited in the French treasury. And they have to pay 20% liability to the French government to hold that 65%. So right off the bat, 85% of the country's wealth, operational money, is in the French banks. And if they want to borrow back from that money, they can only borrow 15%. And if they want more, they have to go elsewhere. And if they try to get more, the French treasury can veto that. Said no, we can only get 15, no matter what, even though it's their money. And the 15% they can borrow is half. Let me put it this way: let's say an African country, let's say the Guinea currently want to get say $1 million from the treasury for their own money. They have to borrow that money at a percentage, and even though it's there, they have to pay a percentage on that to borrow it to use it. And if they want more, they have to go elsewhere. They cannot get any more from the French because they're not going to give it. Why? Because the French, as a collective, for all 14 countries, have over $500 billion they use to they flip it, take the profit, and they're still not giving these countries any of this profit. And they're not telling them how much they have for them and how much they make or the interest, none of that. And also, here's where it gets tricky. They're already robbing 85% of the country's wealth in tax. And then they have to deposit 60% of their whatever their expenditures are. So let's say the country spend 10 billion annually, 5 billion of the reserve automatically have to go in the French banks. And they use it, the French use it. It don't just sit there. Then now, the French has all rights to every single resources come out of the ground. They have first crack at it, no matter what it is, and they can only go to other countries to sell them these resources if the French said that okay, you can go ahead, we don't want it. So, as an example, let me give you an example. Before Niger kicked the French out, Niger was have uranium, which is one of the main ingredients in it comes down to into nuclear power. That's what they enrich uranium to become nuclear power to get nuclear from it. So France was making almost $1 trillion annually from the uranium that was taken from Niger. Listen carefully. They were paying 88 cents per kilo for the uranium, while the uranium is valued at €200 per kilo. And they were taking tons of this, and it valued to almost $1 trillion. According to, you can research it, it's between 500 to 800 billion they were making annually by stealing the resources. And while Niger was only making around 300 million, not billion, they were only making 300 million per year, while the French were making over $600 billion. And this is just from one resources. They still get money from the gold, from everything else. So when the French kicked them out and took over and said we're not paying nothing, that's where they become starting to lose money. Burkina Faso did the same thing, and Mali did the same thing. So they are losing roughly at the moment around a 1.6 to 1.8 trillion dollars annually from just losing these three countries. And that is just in resources. They're still making a $500 million, over 500 million, they're still making from minting the CFA franc. They have to deposit that money in the French bank, and they have to pay 20% for the French to keep their own money. So that's 85% of everything goes directly to the French government and to the treasury of the French. So you see how much money they're making out of these three countries, roughly around 3 to 4 trillion, just off three countries, and they have 14 of them. So this is why they say they're fighting tooth and nail, and that's why they hate the French. Why the French President Macron hate the Russians and the Chinese so much because they are aiding these countries to be fully independent of these countries. So let me tell you which 14 countries has the French who still control. Pop it up there. So you have Burkina Faso, of course, Burkina Faso, but that's not the first one. The first one is Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Bissau, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. Those are the countries that still have to deposit 85% of their GDP directly into the French treasury, which is what, and they don't get it back. They do not get back anything from that. They can borrow off it, but they do not get anything in return when it comes down to interest rates or anything like that. So imagine that $500 billion. So you see why the French government, not the French government, the French citizens have been having this massive strike. It links to this because everyone is in France right now is rioting. They are protesting. The farmers, the retirees, the teachers, the everybody. Why? Because money is not coming in as it used to. They are losing roughly right now, just by just these three countries, independence, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They are losing roughly around 3 trillion to more minimum of just these three countries. You know what's 3 trillion to one economy like France? France is a major country that have a lot of programs when it comes down to giving out free money from um they have a lot of programs for people to get access to free money. And where do you think that free money is coming from? The French economy, not the France, the African countries who they have power over, taxing them heavily. You stealing their money, not returning it, and then use that said money to reinvest and then gain more. So roughly trillions upon trillions of dollars French government is taking from the African continent. And this is not just macro. This is, I'm talking about from since the 1962 come up. So count how much years is that? Over 60 years up to today, 2024, where you're taking annually $500 billion from the French continent, African continent, $500 billion from the African continent. Do you know how much money is that over a 60 year span period? The African countries basically build France to what it is today, and yet they are looking down on us and say we are useless and we are less than. We are not human beings. We are what, three, four type of human being. And these African countries poor. African countries don't know they are what's the word? They are corrupt, but it's not corrupt. How can a country move forward when they don't have no access to their funds? So if I have $100 to spend monthly on my family, and somebody's taking 85 cents of that dollar, what 15 cents can do to run? So that's as an example. I'm just drawing a parable. You have $100 that you spend that it's gonna cost you to maintain your household per month, but you have to give away 85 cents, $85 of that $100 away, and only keep $15. And for you to get back any money from the $85 you gave away, you can only get back 15% of it. So they will give you back maybe, let's say $15. Let's say $15 on your $15. That's $30. So you lose $70 while you only have 30 to run a $100 economy. So that's an example of why African countries are so set back. They don't have money for infrastructure or to growth. It's not coincidental that African countries are so. It was a design. It was designed to keep African countries down. That's the only way they can control the money, the resources, and all these things. And that is why they do not want African countries to be independent of them. I'm not talking about just the French. I'm talking about the Americans, the Europeans. Because remember, in 1884 to 85, when they come together in the Berlin Accord and divide up Africa, this is what happened. They divide up Africa, taking resources, sign these ridiculous deals, and make sure that these all resources come out of it. They have first crack at it, and the African countries now realizing, the younger generation is now realizing, so yo, that can't work no more. Those days are done. Hence the reason why you have so much rebellion going on right now. Not rebellion, revolution is happening right now with the younger generation more. So now those days are done. We cannot be funding other countries' economy that was stagnant. So that's why. Look at what Abraham Traore did in 2 years than what the former president did in 30 years. 2 years. He have done way more than he done in 30 years. So you sure that the French install their own people to keep these countries and the people ignorant to the fact that they are getting robbed blind, as always. So anyway, so let me know what you think about this. If you think um, what they are doing is right, or kind of solely blame African leaders for not having their country moving forward, it's not solely to blame, but they are to blame when they're helping them and stealing and all that. But if you that's why they love presidents that, unless you're a president that's doing good, I mean, financially for himself, that's a puppet. When you see they are doing good for their citizens, they are all of a sudden they are labeled dictators, human rights violators whenever time they go against the powers to be. So keep that in mind when you're talking about African leaders and African countries. The reason why it was deliberately set for them to fail. And it's a fact. This is really the reason why Macron is having a hard time letting go of these countries. And Guinea, I have to be very wary of the Guinea president now, because his wife is French. He's a French legionnaire. So I don't think he's gonna go as hard on the French as Abraham Traore or Tikani of um, Niger and the Mali president. Let's see though. Let's see what this new Senegal president is gonna do as well. If he's gonna follow through like Abraham Traore, or are we gonna be like the Guinea president more um, favorable for the French. We'll see as time goes on. Don't judge him yet, but we'll just take a while and listen and watch to see what he does. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. As always, don't know the drill. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You don't know that works. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Boom.